My name is Don Taylor, if you don't know me. I'm the director of the Stand 21 Safety Foundation. And we've been here at Long Beach, as we count, this is the 17th time we've done a safety seminar and gathered experts in the field of racing safety. And so today, it comes thanks to Mr. Yves Morzeau and his sons, Yves being the founder, president of Stand 21, and the creator of the Stand 21 Safety Foundation, which supports this activity here. We're also at the SCTA El Mirage event in November, December. We're at PRI show every year. We do events, safety events with SCCA, with the vintage car series, vintage Indy cars. So we do what we can. It's a small organization. We do have a website. We have a lot of videos of past seminars. We've had a lot of great experts, we'll mention that in a little bit, speaking here. And right now, though, like a few words of introduction here. Yves, can you welcome our guests? Here we are, Yves. Long Beach, 17 years.
17 years for the foundation, but me first time in 78 for the first Formula 1 Grand Prix, you know. What can I tell? I hope we will have more people who will come in. But I'm so proud to see all of you around and be here. It's an honor to me. It's two big things now. It's in 78. I started in 69. It was no safety. Like was telling Jackie Stewart, in 69, sex was sure, racing was very dangerous. Today, sex is no more sure, but racing is a lot less dangerous. You know, it's a long story. You know, when the last people who was killed in Formula 1, it was 10 years ago. The one before was 20 years ago. He said, it's completely different today compared to our day. In our day, every year, it was 1 to 2 people. Between 60 and 70, it was 17. Between 70 and 80, it was, I think, 9 or 10. In the 80s, it was maybe 5, 6. Now it's no more a subject. When you see a Formula 1 driver today, a modern Formula 1 driver, it's a hero. He's a movie star. It's completely different compared to this time. At this time, the racing drivers were hero, but were killed a lot of times. And that's why, when I start my company in 1969, and if you will see the movie of my life, you know. That's it's difficult to compare, and I don't want to compare. Acura is a certain sort of racing. Before it was another sort of racing, but now it's time to me to thank you all of you, but also to ask my two sons, Roman and Christopher, to come, because I have to you know, at 78 you don't know if you will be here tomorrow. Maybe yes, maybe no. C'est la vie. And it's an honor to me to say, after 56 years on the head of the company, I pass the relay to my kids, to my son, Roman and Christopher. I'm very proud. And for that, we have a relay baton for the Olympic Games in Paris. Okay, we bring from France to show you that it's an honor to me to give that. Okay, I think you will see now we have different world. We have first SFI. Without people like SFI, safety, SFI, FIA, Snell, safety will not be the case today. you cannot understand how was the safety in the 60s, 70s. Between 1970, 69, when I start my business, I was a baker before. And I started my business, safety was nothing. Just a word and no standard. No standard. The first harness in Formula One was mandatory in 72. You know, full face helmet came. This was Dan Gurney, an American hero, who was wearing in 67 full face helmet. Just to show between all this time until 86 for FIA and 87 for SFI, it was no racing suit standard. On the glove standard, on the shoe standard, on all the standard you create for the drag racing, for the touring car, was created by people who was loving racing, like I was loving racing. Thank you. Now I will pass the words to Roma, maybe, and Christopher. Some words, no? You kick me. You know what? They kicked me out the 31st of September. Now I'm like somebody who was under drugs. You know, I have to learn how to do nothing. But I have a beautiful wife to do that. And like told Roma, we kick him out, but he keeps the key.
We'll be quite brief. So welcome, everyone. So we are very happy to be again here, 17 years in Long Beach. Thank you, Don, for the work, and Whitney. So yeah, talking about safety, you know, the motto of the company is we stand for safety and quality, and safety is really our duty. And to talk about safety, we need to learn, and then we need to share. So thank you for all the experts that have been with us for so many years to make sure that we can share the best practices, the experience, and we can save and protect better any racers or any people at the track, not only the racers, because we know that it's a family and we want to take care of that family. So enjoy the seminar. Anything we can do, just let us know. Feel free to contact us. If we can help, we will be very happy to help. So thank you again and enjoy the seminar.
Hello everyone, I'll be very quick, I promise. Thank you to all of you to be here. Thank you to keep our sport very safe. Merci Don. Merci Whitney for all the investment you put in the foundation. Our goal, as said Roman and my dad, is to keep all the drivers safe. The more safety we're going to have in racing, the more people will come to race. So we have a duty to continue on that side. We will keep the DNA of the company and the values. So you can rely on us if you need to talk about safety or if you need anything, you have our contact. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Like was telling John Melvin, if you kill your hero, you will kill your sport.
Keep your heroes, you'll keep your sport.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Putting together today's program, I thought of so many aging race drivers that we seem to know for some reason in our lives, and looking at what would be the challenges safety-wise for somebody older who now has the money to race a sportsman's sports car or Bonneville or elsewhere. But you might be challenged by heat, maybe medical conditions, maybe vision, maybe your vision is going somewhat. What are those challenges? And we got somebody to talk about that. But then I said, you know, we should really balance this out and look at younger drivers and the situation there. So I asked Mike Hurst from SFI talk about some of the work they're doing and what he sees out there in terms of attitudes of people, their parents towards children and their protection. And we're going to start, though, today with our Lifetime Achievement Award. Now, this is something we've done here the last several years. We were interrupted by COVID. The three inductees have been Dr. Steve Olvey, Dr. Terry Trammell, and Jim Downing. And that's kind of my era of safety work as well. I was at General Motors. We created a safety program for motorsports after Tommy Kindle's accident. We had Tommy Kindle here last year or the year before talking about that. And kicking off the expertise that we had in General Motors, including Dr. John Melvin, and these folks went forward with action in this country, action with FIA, getting the Kuhns device certified, working again through SFI. And so there was a lot in that post-Dale Earnhardt kind of era of safety. But going back even before that and going beyond the things we think about, with Stand 21, we're thinking driver safety equipment, meaning suits, helmets, gloves, shoes. But beyond that, there's a whole lot of other safety regulations, safety standards that have been developed for the sport, and not that many years ago. And there's a long story behind that. And so we said, who really is the person responsible for that? And that gave us all the agreement that Mr. Arnie Kuhns. I don't know if you know him. He's been the president of SFI. He's created the SFI Foundation. There's a long history to it. And if you look at any rule book out there and thumb through it, SCTA, NHRA, IMSA, any of the others, you will see a lot of SFI standards. And I worked with him when I was with NHRA and with GM. And it's a tough job, trying to get a lot of manufacturers to agree on standards, trying to get them implemented with the sanctioning bodies. And so he's done a great job. And so with that, we want to present, although Arnie passed away this last year, present to him our Lifetime Achievement Award. Okay, so this is to Arnie Kuhns for all he's done, Lifetime Achievement, Motorsports Safety, and it's being presented to his son, Chris Bowman, who is right here. Chris?
Thank you very much, Don. Appreciate it.
And here, if we can do an official handoff.
Yeah.
And here. And photo op.
Say some words when ready. Thank you very much.
Several times I was coming to San Diego to know at the beginning what is SFI, because we are European, we have FIA. And I discovered a lot of very good people, very nice, and really, really people who love racing or love safety. One day, I was with my Hummer in the desert. I love to be with friends in the desert. I was with Mr. Wilfried Eibar Springs, with Mr. Alvin Springer, who was Porsche Motorsport North America for 20 more years, you know. And we were in the middle of nowhere, Borrego Spring. We were in a bar. He said, it's the best place, you know. When we are in do something like that, we are making triathlon. Morning, play golf. Afternoon, off-road. Evening, empty us bottle of wine, you know. And who was behind the bar?
Arnie.
Yeah, Arnie. He said, he looked at me and said, what are you doing here? I said, oh, I'm with two Germans, they try to kill me. It's a good souvenir. You are a great dad and somebody who dedicated his life to safety.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so I asked Chris to explain his role in the organization today and to give us a little background on Arnie and this whole SFI thing. We know the logo, we've seen the specs, but how did this all start with Arnie and the challenges he faced? Chris?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Once again, my name is Chris Bowden. I'm Vice President of Business Operations for SFI Foundation. So first of all, I definitely want to say from the bottom of my heart, a personal and professional thank you to Yves and Stand 21. Arnie would be more than honored to receive this, and I am in his place. I'm very honored. to be able to accept it. There's a lot of parallels I've realized in my life, Arnie's life, and SFI with Stand 21. I've had the pleasure of working for my dad. My sister's the president of SFI, so besides being a Christopher, there's very close relations, I think, business-wise, and parallels here. And Arnie passed away, like Don said, in June 1st, 2023. I have had the wonderful and kind of the unique perspective of growing up with Arnie since I was about 5 years old. That's when he became my father. He married my mom. And my childhood with Arnie was amazing. It was like Arnie went to work all day, and we went to the racetrack on the weekends. And I didn't really know what the heck we were doing because I was young, but we did it, as it progressed. He was either racing, because a lot of people don't know that Arnie did race amateur cars. He raced in SCCA, and he raced in an ITS class. He had a Datsun 280Z, which he loved, and this is back when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. So he'd hook that up in the open trailer and take me and Jen and Mom, and we'd go to Willow Springs or Riverside or, out in Holtville in the middle of the desert. And if we weren't racing, we were going to watch a race. We'd be at Pomona going to the drag races, and it was an awesome childhood. More than that, he was truly an amazing person. I can say that from behind the scenes at home because I lived with him my whole life. He raised me, and this is, the truth that I heard that man raise his voice one time my entire life. He passed away a couple years ago. He was a gentleman. He was passionate, but he was a gentleman, and he used to always tell me, do the right thing. That was his, and I think he really did throughout his life. He really did the right thing. But I do want to give a little background on Arnie. This is about him, and I want people to just kind of know where he came from and how that transitioned into SFI today, SFI Foundation. So I'm going to read off some notes, but I can't memorize his bio. But I do want to give some bio on him. So Arnold Kuhns, of course, we know him as Arnie in the industry and personally. He was born in Pennsylvania, raised in Ohio, and received his formal education mostly in New York. He graduated from Colgate University with a Bachelor of Arts and a BS in Engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic. And then he got a master's degree in business from University of Iowa in '66. And he entered his career in 1962, so while he was going to college, and I heard a lot of these stories, he was one of those guys that slept 3 hours a night, and he had to pay for his schooling. So he worked at Alcoa for his first real job, Aluminum Company of America, in Davenport, Iowa, in various production and engineering roles. And Alcoa then ultimately transferred him back to Pennsylvania, where he held senior management positions. He worked up the ranks very quickly. He was a smart man, a hard worker. Alcoa then brought Arnie to California in '72, where he was assigned duties of outside sales for defense and aerospace industries, and kind of ended up managing the West Coast for Alcoa. And after 5 years, he moved on to Norris Industries as manufacturing manager of their new wheel division. So Arnie, he had a pretty good run in the wheel industry. A lot of people didn't know that. He joined Appliance Industries as vice president and held that even as it merged with Keystone Products. So he had a very unique background of engineering, production, business skills, outside sales, and he kind of was the one-man show, if you know Arnie. And I kind of joke with people now, it takes me, it takes Mike, and it takes my sister to fill kind of like his one position, because he was a very, very well-rounded man. And in 1984, he was approached by his peers in the automotive industry to lead the newly formed SFI Foundation. This was part of SEMA, and this is where I get this question almost on a daily basis, and Mike probably does too, even from people we've worked with for 20 years. What does SFI stand for? Well, people call me, hey, by the way, Chris, what does SFI stand for? And that's probably the first thing I asked Arnie when I was little, what does it stand for? So at the beginning, it was SEMA Foundation Incorporated. So SEMA had a safety division they wanted to start. And this is back in pre-84 when it was in fruition. SEMA at that time decided they want to focus more on the specialty equipment side of things. They didn't want to probably pursue the safety side, but they didn't want to get rid of it as well. So Arnie was asked to step in, and then ultimately, from what Arnie has told me, Arnie asked if he could, continue this on with SFI. The marketing and the symbolism of SFI had already started to take root. So he did. He became president of SFI. They separated from SEMA, of course, in a good way, right? So SFI, Arnie would always say it stands for itself. It no longer stands for SEMA Foundation Incorporated. It has not since 1984. So SFI, a lot of people were under the assumption still today that it stands for Safety Foundation. It does not. It just stands for itself. We've kept the name. And so Arnie at that time created a really innovative system, creating minimum performance testing standards for products, right, to help reduce the frequency of failures of parts in the racing industry. This is what he was doing. And that was a tough go, as Yves understands this more than anybody. Back then, safety was not on the forefront. But at that time, Arnie was hitting the streets, trying to figure out what kind of standards were needed. And in '84, SFI managed 4 product standards for one sanctioning body. That was it. And now today, through Arnie's work and through the employees' work through the company, even at the time of Arnie's passing, SFI has grown to more than 100 quality assurance specifications and to more than 200 sanctioning bodies. As Don mentioned, if you open up a rule book, you're going to find SFI due to Arnie's hard work. And along the way, Arnie built countless relationships. I mean, I can't tell you whether I'm at the PRI show or I'm on the phone or I'm in a meeting. It doesn't matter where. Everyone knew Arnie, and nobody's had a bad thing to say about him, which is unbelievable to me. I do have a different last name than him. So a lot of people don't know that I'm his son. And I'll get into some deep conversations about Arnie at meetings or at dinners, and they don't know until I've had an opportunity. And I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about Arnie, and nor do I. He was just a wonderful man. He was able to work with top safety pioneers in the industry, such as Stand 21. And before I wrap it up, I do want to just mention some of the awards, because I know he would never list these, but I will, since he's not here, and I want to brag about him a little bit. So along his career, Arnie was honored with the Sports Car Club of America George Snively Award for outstanding contributions to motorsport safety in '95. The United States Auto Club Jack O'Neill Award for motorsport safety in '96. The SEMA Hall of Fame Award in 2002. An NHRA Wally for professional contributions to drag racing and high performance industries. SEMA Motorsports Parts Manufacturers, Hall of Fame in 2016. The British Drag Racing Hall of Fame's Lucas Oil Global Achievement Award in 2018. And the Society of Automotive Engineers John Melvin Motorsports Safety Award in 2021. And now this wonderful award, which I can't thank you enough, Stand 21. Arnie would be absolutely overjoyed by this. He was a humble man, but he did enjoy occasions such as this. And so on his behalf, and Jennifer Fay and Mike and everyone at SFI, I want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart for this award. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Arnie. Thinking about you today. Back to my theme. We said racing at any age, and when I proposed that, Dean Case said, well, let's not use ageism, let's talk, how about generation. And I think that's probably the better word. And what I'm realizing here now is that we're seeing a new generation. with SFI, going to Chris and Jennifer and Mike running things now, the younger generation, the Morzeau family as Eve's sons take over the business. SAE, a lot of members from the SAE Formula activities, Formula SAE activities, next generation there. And so I think we have a bright future here, and I think lessons in safety will be carried forward for many years. Also, Dr. Terry Trammell, we have his daughter here, Rachel, so we are well represented here with a range of age groups. So with that, let's move on to Mike Hurst, who will tell us a little bit about youth racing, youth safety. But also, if you're here before hearing Mike, he is an avid rally racer, an official and safety guy, and he's given us a whole lot of just practical tips and showing us what not to do and so forth. So I asked him maybe he can give us a couple tips here that people can apply as soon as they get home. Mike?
Okay. Thank you. Starting where Chris left off, and really, I'm not really part of a youth movement anymore. I think it's more Chris, and going forward, and the company's going to be in good hands, with Chris and Jennifer. So I feel good about that. Feel good about the future for SFI, and just to recap where Chris started. SFI is it's a nonprofit organization. We serve racers in the racing industry, and people ask, where do specs come from? Do we just grab them out of thin air? And probably once a month, a manufacturer will call me and say, oh, I've got this incredible new widget that does whatever, whether it's even has something to do with safety or not. And, how do we get this SFI certified? Well, the specifications come about because of issues on the racetrack, and sanctioning bodies say, hey, we have this issue, we have these failures, we want to address that. This part of the car needs to be better, or we need to protect the driver with this, or spectators. And so it's the sanctioning bodies that come to us and say, we need to address this problem. And then we form a committee, people from the sanctioning body, people, manufacturers, engineers, outside consultants, and we meet and decide how to solve the problem. And then that sanctioning body who's requesting the spec, they've got to commit to enforcing the spec, because otherwise it doesn't work. Arnie used to say the sanctioning bodies are driving the bus, because if they don't enforce what we create for a spec, then it's not effective. And SFI doesn't certify anything technically, because as a practical matter, could we examine every driver suit that Stand 21 builds and confirm it really can't work that way? It's not practical. The manufacturers certify that their products meet an SFI specification. That ability to certify requires periodic testing, other legal requirements. It's like a quality assurance program. And then there's audit testing that's done to make sure that they actually are producing what they validated in our lab. And going back to talking about the 80s and 70s, if not for standards, who determines if a harness is strong enough or the thermal protection in a fire suit is enough? How do we establish that? And it's really incredible to me what the manufacturers can do once you give them a target. I saw this, the first program that I was involved in 2012, when I was hired, one of the first things was the NASCAR seat program. And, we have these seat loads, 2,000 pounds on a head restraint, and it's only allowed to deflect a half an inch on the outside. How do you make that? The seat's going to weigh, that seat's going to weigh 100 pounds. And it's like, but give them give them 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and they start working on that, and they could build a seat. They could build a seat that weighs 25 pounds, and it'll do it now. So it's, once they have a target, an engineer has a target to work at and say, this is the parameters we're working for. It's really incredible what they can do. Eves talks about advancements and how great Formula One is. Formula One safety, IndyCar safety, NASCAR safety is really, it's something else. But if you go to Gas City Speedway in Indiana, you're going to see something else, right? I mean, there's some places in motorsports that are stuck. They're still in 1958. So there's still plenty of work to be done. And also, that brings up another thing about SFI is we try to be very efficient because all the safety in the world doesn't work if the racer can afford it. So it's important to have programs that benefit the grassroots racer and is affordable to them. So we also operate a test lab in Poway, California. We probably do more. If you look in the bottom right, that's a thermal performance test for a fire suit. That machine runs every day. I'm sure we do more of that than anyone else in the world. In the lower left, that's a seat test fixture for the NASCAR and sprint car seats. We do lots of strength and materials. We utilize outside labs. We don't have like in the lower right, we do the validation for Kuhns devices at a laboratory in Indiana. Wheel testing is done in outside labs. We have the fire suppression system testing. That's our lab, but it's conveniently located like 2,800 miles from my office in Pennsylvania. But they don't like us setting off big fires in California. I don't know why. And more things is like Chris said, 100 different programs, strength and materials for many specs. That's and clutches, and the quantity of these parts that are being used. The grassroots racers. Jen was telling me about this not too long ago about say like harmonic balancers on engines and automatic transmission flex plates. The labels are serialized. We're in the millions on those labels. So the use of it is really, when you talk about the scale of the market, it's really impressive sometimes. New things we're working on. We've just published a new sprint car. It's like sprint, midget, champ dirt car, fuel cell bladder, because basically there was no fuel cell spec being used in those cars. One was written years ago, and then we had the problem with enforcement. World of Outlaws is committed to enforcing the new bladder spec, so we're hoping that'll bring about a nice improvement in the performance of their fuel bladders. It's a difficult nut to crack on the fuel bladder on the sprint car because it's just hanging off the back of the car, so it's subject to punctures by say broken suspension pieces, the bumpers of other cars. So we've really focused on ramping up the puncture resistance of the bladder for that new spec. I've been working with Terry Trammell on a new IndyCar seatbelt spec that is actually has gone to our board for final approval and should be approved any day. So me, rally driver, more of a history in racing and event management than just pure engineering. Arnie hired me, said he didn't want some egghead. He wanted some guy who could turn a wrench. So and I'm also the SFI crash test dummy. And I was just going to touch a little bit on this because it's like I'm going to go into the youth thing too, but I'm an old rally driver. I raced 3 weeks ago in Missouri, and this is my kind of like upsides and downsides of things. It's definitely, I've done it for 44 years, and you can feel the difference on what you can and can't do. Don mentioned vision and everything. I could never see worth a damn, so I don't know if that changed. Night vision, yeah, it's not as good, but thank God they invented these LED lights that are just like incredible compared to what we had in the 80s. So that's nice. Mental and physical fatigue and physical strength, yeah, there's a difference. You try to stay in shape, but when I could do everything and not get tired, I was a great big guy. I weighed 240 pounds back in the 90s, but nothing bothered me. Now it's tough. The advantages, your knowledge. Most old guys have been around, your knowledge of car setups is going to exceed those young guys who are crazy and just starting out. Knowledge of strategies, know when to push and when to conserve and when to conserve the car. Hopefully, if you're an old guy, your financial resources are better. The interpersonal skills, dealing with sanctioning body officials, maybe having a reputation, a good reputation, and like they say, old age and treachery. So, but moving on, and when Don asked me to speak to issues to youth drivers and smaller drivers, I was working on what kind of an angle to take on that. And one of these presentations, you always want to give like one thing to take away, that people who come there are going to remember. And so the singular takeaway for me is fit, because you look at, sometimes you see like a junior dragster, and the car was previously run by this, you got a little driver, and his 15-year-old brother's the last guy to drive it. And you look at that little guy in the car, and he's just rattling around in the car. It doesn't fit. And maybe you'd see the same thing with the helmet. So my takeaway is to get people to think about fit in the car. But you look at the professional level cars, IndyCar, F1, and you look at the fit of the driver in the car, and that driver, side to side. But even with Hinchcliffe there, he's got maybe a little too much room, I think. But they're very confined in the car. And why? So why? Why is it important to fit the car? And the best example I could think of is what we see from, and these are impact sled tests from 38.1 Hans type device validation tests, which we do at very high energy. This one was actually a little high, but that's the sled acceleration pulse. So this is the crash, and that crash was based on a crash years ago that happened at Chicagoland Speedway, and they had a data recorder on the car, and they duplicated that crash. So this is the accelerometers on the sled. The sled only moves in the x-axis. It's on rails. It doesn't move up and down. So that sled accelerometer reads 69.8 Gs. Now, of course, it's not the only. We've got 70 channels of data coming off this dummy and the sled. Well, here's the accelerometer in the dummy's head, okay? And he can't hit anything on that sled. That's just the accelerometer, and he's 89 Gs. The sled was 69. Why is the head seeing more acceleration and a higher peak than the sled? Anybody? Yeah, because that dummy's head can move in relation to the sled, so the accident starts later for the dummy than it does for the car. Then this is what the sled setup looks like. And actually, this is a rear firing sled. We don't crash it forward. We accelerate it backwards, which creates exactly the same impact. The advantage is when we set up the dummy, we don't have to worry about him getting displaced as we accelerate the dummy up. So he's starting from a stationary point and accelerating backwards. So I wouldn't want to ride that. So I didn't go back into the CFV files and overlap the two pulses. I just did it by hand. The blue line is the sled, the red line is the head. And you can take correlations to any kind of normal crash. If you look at the blue line when it goes vertical early, and there's acceleration there, and in an actual impact, whether it's a big car or small car, that initial impact, that's the tire blowing out. That's the bumper bending, the tie rod bending, what deformation you have in the car. And so the chassis of the car and this accelerometer on a sled, to equate that, you'd have it on the frame rail of the car, would make that blue pulse. So that's taking advantage of all that deformation, but the head's not seeing that. You look at the difference between where the graph starts for the sled and has significant rise versus where it starts for the head. There's an offset there. And the key to making that peak at the head lower is to make that offset as small as possible. So and the head in that dummy, he's strapped into the seat, and he's got a Hans device on, and those seat belts are so tight you could play a tune on them. And still you have this offset. So, but then you say, what happens when the head does get to the roll bar, the steering wheel, something inside the car? And this is that's a shot of an impact from a helmet test. That's a helmet into the roll bar, the head form duplicating a child's head mass, and this is from our youth helmet spec. But you can see you can generate, it was 89 without touching anything, but here even at a very low speed, 5.3 meters per second, as soon as you touch that roll bar, 200 Gs. And that's actually a pretty nasty 200 G impact because of the duration. It's got 10 to 12 milliseconds of duration on that impact. So what do you do? What do you do about it? How do you make it better? One, okay, the kids, different sizes, they're growing, they're going to change. Number one, I'd say a poured seat, where the beaded seat, the poured seat kits you can buy. It takes some experimentation unless you do it all the time, but you build a poured seat, and you fill in those gaps where that driver fits tight in that car. Another thing about, and this applies to all cars, adjustability. Now, race cars, they make everything adjustable. Even in a car with a solid frame, it'll have an adjustable clutch. We can adjust this. We can adjust the caster in the front end. We can change all these things, and everything's adjustable. But then you look, there's only one spot to mount the harness. The lap belts mount only in one spot. Why not make that adjustable? We're making everything else adjustable so it fits the driver. And then different drivers get in the car, or with the youth driver, the driver grows. Let's make those adjustable, where we can move that harness and put everything where it should be. And this is in a junior dragster, but there are guys marketing the head surrounds now for junior dragsters, the same as you see, same material you see in the Indy car or in a NASCAR seat, or in the nitro funny cars and top fuel cars. Cage padding. And one of my pet peeves is people won't pad that forward hoop. Well, your head's going to get to that. And they think, you sit in a seatbelt and the kid leads forward or the driver leads forward. I can't hit that. In a big impact, you're going to hit it. The body's going to move. The body compresses. The belts stretch. If there's a bar there, if it's that far from the kid's head, it's in the right situation, he's going to hit it. Go ahead and pad it. The padding, we don't get rich off padding. It's not a scam. And it's very inexpensive. And it lasts forever. So get the padding. A helmet that fits, and that's critical. If you go back to that offset between the driver not being tied perfectly to the car, well, if the helmet's not perfectly on the driver's head, you're going to have that same situation. Where if there's motion in the head in relation to that helmet in an impact, the acceleration forces are going to go up because you're delaying the onset of the early part of the accident. So gloves that fit, that's another thing. You see a little kid who's got great big gloves on. Well, are those going to stay on? The youth Hans device is available. And it was a presentation at PRI that was it made a lot of good points that John Padalecki from NASCAR did, where they were talking about shorter tethers and restraining the head, not so much because the shorter tethers perform better in the impact. It was because it limited the driver's starting position for the impact. The natural inclination, especially for a child, would be to lean away from an impact. Whereas the IndyCar guys are probably the best at, they know that car starts to rotate, they know it's gone, they're not getting it back. They will put their head back on that headrest, knowing that an impact's coming. NASCAR guys, not so good at it yet. And because I've done it too, I wrecked a car and you see that tree coming or whatever, and you're get away from that. But the more constrained the driver's head is in that position with proper padding, the better the starting position is and the better the result. Also, I always like put in there FR undergarments. I hate seeing guys get out of the cars, kids or adults, and they're wearing the dye-sublimated shirt, the polyester shirt, and that's another presentation I did before. That stuff turns into hot glue. I mean, not at a point where you're burned up. It turns into hot glue at a point where maybe you just have a blister or a relatively minor burn. Instead, you'll be going to the hospital and they with a wire brush scraping that stuff out of your skin. So that's no fun. So there's an example of the poured seat. The kid's getting fitted for a poured seat in the bag on the left. And there's an example of this from an ARCA car, but adjustable shoulder harnesses on the right. And I'm sure they did that because a lot of those have rental programs. Different drivers get in the cars. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, and we've seen this even in junior dragsters, youth electric powered cars. We did a battery test in 2023 at the Battery Innovation Center in Indiana, where we did nail punctures on small batteries. It was about this big, and then we experimented with different layers of fire retardant clothing, and we found that we put maybe about the same distance as our TPP test in our lab. We took like 10 layers of Nomex and put it in there and fired that off, and it burned through it in a tenth of a second. Where that amount of Nomex in the normal fire would have gotten 90 seconds of protection, and that fire is so hot. Here's an example of a battery fire in a junior dragster, where that cell is lit off, and the intensity. Usually, the intensity is not long, but it happens fast, and there is no garment technology that can protect against that. If we were to come up with a spec to protect against that, what it would be a medieval knight's suit of armor made out of 18 gauge steel, because anything else doesn't work. So, and this just gives an example of our heat source that we use for validation of SFI suits certified to SFI specs. And that's just an example of the heat, and that's the reference point for the heat. The red arrow points to basically this is a stole curve straightened out with the X and Y variable, but it shows 0.2 of a second to a second degree burn from our heat source that we use. Now you put a level 5 fire suit in there and you've got 10 seconds, but 0.2 of a second with bare skin. But this is the difference between that battery fire and the SFI test. The SFI test on the left and that amount of heat. And you can't even measure the heat flux close to it because the thermocouples, it just evaporates it. But from 3 feet away, that's the difference in heat between that battery fire. So my point is, and racers don't like this, especially guys in the electric car stuff, they want something trick. They want a carbon fiber box, and they really want a Lexan box, where you can see the batteries and all the wiring in it. No, 18 gauge steel. If it's not pretty enough, chrome it or something. But an 18 gauge steel box, it worked. Vent the box away from the driver. And what's wrong with an 18 gauge steel box? Hey, I got a fuel bladder in my car. What's it got around it? An 18 gauge steel box. So, okay, takeaway number 2. Number 1, driver's got to fit. 2, put steel around the lithium battery. So, and I always like to include the counterfeit fraud issue. If you're trying to buy counterfeit stuff, you can buy it. You can get on your phone right now and buy counterfeit, because if all your shopping is price, you're going to find it. And it's not just auto racing safety equipment, it's anything. There's so much in every market and every product out there. Buy from a reputable source. Stand 21 is not going to sell you a counterfeit suit. Summit Racing is not going to sell you a counterfeit suit. An unknown buyer who only has a Facebook page and doesn't have any business address or even a phone number, yeah, they're going to sell you counterfeit stuff. And we get those calls. Well, I bought this off some seller on Facebook, and I paid $200 for a fire suit and it's fake. What can I do? And it has a fake SFI label. Well, geez, looks like you were trying to do that. What can we say? So, contact us if you suspect it, report. We have security features in the labels. Why do they do it? Well, like counterfeit harnesses. Why would you counterfeit a harness label when our label is 21 cents? It would cost you more to make the counterfeit label. So, but the reason is they're skipping, 1, building a quality product, and 2, the validation, the actual testing, which is expensive. Should they really be skipping that part? But like I said, the cost, as I said before, all the safety in the world doesn't work if the racer can afford it. So we try to be very, very efficient on what we do. So, and this is, well, here's an example. This is a counterfeit. This is a panel off a leg of a counterfeit fire suit with a fake SFI label on it. So, well, thank you very much. Okay. Any questions?
Do you have any quick questions? I see one up front from David. Stand up.
They've been coming to you seminars for quite a few years, and yet it seems like the electric racing industry continues to move forward, and yet there aren't any good solutions for anything. The fact that you showed Junior Dragster, I can't believe NHRA would even, being a part of it, would even allow electric Junior Dragsters and now funny cars that I see. It's such a dangerous combination. I don't get it, man. It's not good.
Yeah.
Not even close, and yet all the different associations have been struggling to address electrical issues. I know in Europe you got to throw a blanket over, make sure it's grounded, and the guys have to watch them. So it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Well, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, the the only way you could have the electric car racing is basically spec series control, where you're controlling the software and the battery management, and you're controlling that heat. As far as letting guys go to the junkyard and getting batteries out of Teslas and twisting the wires together and seeing what happens, I don't think there's any control. I mean, I tell the guys from NHRA, I said, I'm glad I'm 63 and you're 33. I don't have any good answers. My only answer is, and I was involved with the Nitrocross electric rallycross cars. I worked some events for them, and they had a lot of controls in place, and it's expensive. And those cars are $700,000. But it was a locked software. The management, based on the conditions and the track length and everything, they had engineers there and say, this is how much current you're going to get and how much heat we're going to allow. And one of the things I noticed in those cars was everybody who's, and I don't know if it's in other programs, but with that car, they vastly underestimated how much heat they were making. And I heard the same thing from the NASCAR electric car development, that the heat that it was making exceeds that of an IC car as far as trying to control that heat. And it's heat from the batteries, not so much from the motors, heat's from the VFC, that's controlling the current or converting the current into the car. And it was just like a massive underestimate.
Remember 2 years ago in Vienna, Sebastian Loeb with the rally car, electric rally car.
Yeah.
It blew up. It was a beautiful car, the
Yep.
beautiful car. It blew up in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
You cannot stop.
Yeah.
Remember also in Portugal.
Yep.
Also the electric motorbike.
Yeah.
The race motorbike. It starts all the building.
Yep. Yep. That's right.
If you have Formula E, there are so much problems. They control everything.
Yeah. If it had its 18-gauge steel box around it, it wouldn't have burned everything else up. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. All right, well, Mike, thank you. And that's exactly the kind of great advice we're looking for, and the notion about the fit will remain with us forever. And it might apply maybe in Formula SAE too, where you might have different drivers getting into your car, some larger, some smaller. And so consider that. I think overall, though, when you look at youth and racing and safety, some good signs. We've thought of us being overprotective parents with the bicycle helmets and all these other safety devices. I think that's probably a good thing as it leads to racing, if they go on to racing karts or other vehicles, having that mentality to strap up the helmet, and the use of the Kuhns, and now you look at the head surrounds in the junior dragster. I think that's a good sign. I think the examples that youth see today, starting with Formula One, and they will see their heroes, Lando Norris and Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, and they have the Kuhns devices. They have a lot of protective padding in their cars. So that's a good example. Now, back in the 50s, examples we saw, and someone else may have the same memory, when a car crashed on the road, a regular production car crashed on the road, crashed into a bridge abutment or into a tree, typically the steering wheel shaft would go into the chest. And it would be like, yep, that's what happens. It wouldn't be like, what can we do about that? That came years later. But it was like, yeah, there's the consequence. There you go. And no thought for that. Thinking about it now, it's probably not so much a case of the steering column shaft coming back on the person, but the motion of the person without a seat belt flying forward into the shaft. and they come together. Yeah, but look at all the work that's been done since then. And also I'll mention on electric vehicle safety, that's a subject we've covered here. We also put together with University of North Carolina a special seminar just on electric vehicle safety. We had from Formula E, the guy from Williams. We had from IMSA, Robert Bosworth, who, did I see some IMSA people? Yeah. And of course this weekend, they are racing the LMP hybrid cars too, with a lot of precautions and a spec battery series and so forth, spec battery package. And also our friends from SCTA have added more electric classes, and they're facing the how do we inspect this and what happens if something goes wrong issue. So it is happening slowly. Yes, there are a lot of concerns about it, but it will happen, I think. But moving along to our guest driving speaker, Danny Thompson. Danny, will you come up here? And I know you need to plug in your presentation here. I met Danny when I was at General Motors racing years ago. And I said, what do I have from that era? And I pulled out, I don't know if anybody has, Chevy Thunder? Yes, some people remember these. It was a whole series. Rick Vogelin published this. And in this one, it talks about Chevy races to off-road history. There's a picture inside of the Chevy drivers and Larry Ragland and others, and Danny Thompson, of course, who was doing the Stadium series for Chevrolet at the time. Also, since I'm a book guy, and I got this book, and I reviewed this book recently. Whoa. And I dropped that book as well.
Let me plug this in while you talk. Yeah. I'll keep talking.
A wonderfully well illustrated book of all these heroes of land speed records. And of course, European guy, European features, vehicles, European vehicles for the most part. But it does include, as it should, Mickey Thompson, 406 miles an hour, Challenger 1. And another record breaker is in the book, a little illustration of you and the car, and Challenger 2. Yeah, and so.
Judy promoted that book. Didn't you promote that book? Yeah.
And now I am. Now I'm promoting it, yes. Yes, and so Danny, long history, asked him to talk about that. And the lessons he's learned, with all the dangerous stunts you've done through the years. And I'll turn it over to you, Danny Thompson.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Well, they couldn't find anybody too much older than me, I guess, racing. They said gracefully. So, oh, you're older than me. That's right. So, but I started racing quite young. This is a picture of me right over here, about 4 miles from here was where Long Beach or Lions Drag Strip was. And my dad built Lions Drag Strip in 1953, the first permanent facility for drag racing in the country, actually. And on the other side of the racetrack, the drag strip, he put this quarter midget track in to try to keep all the families involved. I mean, back then. I mean, this is, so that right there, I think, is 58 or so, 1958. So this was the start of my racing career. And the sad part is, that was the finish of my racing career. Thank you. No, but so my dad ran on the drag strip, and I was over there racing around and everything, and somebody got upside down in my event and broke a leg or got hurt anyway. And so one of the spectators, or parents probably was there, ran over to the drag strip side, got hold of my dad and said, Danny's over there and he's upside down, he's hurt real bad. So my dad comes from the drag strip side, running over, jumping over the hay bales, and looks at me, and there I am. I won the race. Got to kiss the trophy girl and had my little trophy, and I was all smiling and everything. And my dad looked at me and he said, that's it. You're done. you will never race again, ever. So, I mean, it's like, just after that, I was crying because that's all I wanted to do ever in my whole life was race. The Speedway was what I wanted to do. I wanted to race at Indianapolis, and that was the only thing. So that was it until I turned 18 years old and I left the house, and that's when I actually got to start racing. And of course, I didn't tell my dad, and I started racing motorcycles in Mammoth. I lived in Mammoth. I went skiing for the weekend, and this was, when I was just out of high school and came home 5 years later. But anyway, then I just started racing anything I could get in without his help, because he said, "Well, you can race, but you got to pay for it all. I'm not helping." Because and mainly, I'm still pissed off about him not helping, but at the same time, I'm his kid, and he didn't want me to get hurt. And in the 50s and 60s, I mean, people got killed. I mean, it was, the safety deal wasn't a big deal. I think Yves was saying earlier, I mean, the Formula One guys, I mean, they didn't even wear seatbelts. There was a guy named Maston Gregory, a Formula One driver, that just before he hit and crashed, they called him the jumper. He would stand up and jump, and then they started putting seatbelts in. So anyway, then I went into sprint cars, and this is Ascot, of course, and it was such a bitchin' place to go to, because you could go at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and race all night, go home at 11 o'clock, and you'd be good. So, yeah.
We have the honor to receive the first winner of the Long Beach Grand Prix in 1975. Sir, not sir, but Mr. Brian Redman.
Hey. Honored for sure. So then anyway, I'm back onto different kind of cars and stuff, and this is a Formula Hayashi, and I raced here at Long Beach, and I can't even remember what year it was. That's part of the age deal. But so I got to race Long Beach and got to have like the SCTA or SCCA guys right here, the corner workers and stuff. I mean, talk about safety. I mean, when you hit the fence, and I hit the fence, they're always right there. And these guys, having a beer after the races with these guys, they always got your back, and it's pretty darn cool. So that's also Formula Atlantic. I raced that. So I skipped Super V and all that stuff and went right into the little bit faster cars because I'm a fabricator by trade. I've had the absolute privilege of working with, I worked at Dan Gurney's and I worked with Phil Remington. I worked under him, and Nye Frank and Corinne Epperly and the Surfers, Tom Job and those guys. So I got to work with some incredibly talented fabricators. So I got this car, and it was completely crashed. It had been put in the fence, and so I rebuilt the tub, and that's how I got to start racing those things. Once again, no help from my dad, because he said, if you're going to race, you're going to do it on your own. And he wanted me to be a lawyer, right? And, well, you can see that didn't work out very well. There's the man right there. And he's telling me I did something wrong. I'll guarantee you that. But that's my dad, and what a hell of a man right there. I mean, that's I learned so much from him. I got to change the thing before I cry. Back to off-road. This is when I drove for Chevrolet, drove for Don, and the Chevrolet deal. That's right below the right rear tire is a air-filled Budweiser bottle that's 8 feet tall. So that's how high in the air we are right there. Those things, they were pretty amazing. We built those things from scratch. Started with just pieces of tubing and built them. The shocks, the red shocks up in the front are all air shocks. We built all our own shocks. The series was pretty amazing, and we performed in front of 60,000 people at Anaheim Stadium and San Diego, LA Coliseum, and had a good deal. Had a good run with Chevrolet. Now, that must be Chevrolet's fault or something. I don't know what happened there, but that's once again the corner workers at the MTEG, Mickey Thompson Entertainment races. I mean, they come save you all the time. But those cars, they were on such an edge. like if you came around, say, a left-hand corner and you were right in the middle of the corner, you could walk up and actually push the car over. That's how much on the edge they were. I mean, we were upside down. Well, testing one day, I got upside down 12 times. You know, so, but we rolled them back. You know, we made them so they would do that. Rolled them back on the wheels and went back in, looked at the stuff, see what we could do to make them be better. And so I got a lot of experience as a crash test dummy also. I moved on to Bonneville. I finally lost my, realized that Indianapolis wasn't going to happen. And I was getting older. I wasn't young enough and pretty enough anymore to get in one of those cars. So I started racing Bonneville, Bonneville's what put the Thompson family on the map. I mean, my dad in 1960 went 400 miles an hour. First American to go for 400 miles an hour. In a car that him and a guy named Fritz Voigt built in my dad's garage in El Monte. So, I mean, it was, there wasn't any engineering, you know, papers or drawings or anything like that. In fact, Sir Malcolm Campbell had asked my dad, he was running up there at the same time, he said, Mickey, I try to do a limey accent, but I can't. He said, Mickey, can we see the drawings on your car? Because we'd like to see all the aerodynamic numbers and all that kind of stuff. My dad said, no. And the guy was kind of like, excuse me? He says, no. He says, why not? He says, because they're on chalk. They've been written in chalk on the floor in the shop. So my dad and Fritz took 4 Pontiac engines, put them on crates, took a piece of chalk, made a line all the way around the thing and said the car's going to be this wide and this long. And that's how he started. You know, and my dad didn't even finish high school. Well, he did finish high school. My mom finished for him, you know, did all the papers and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, graduated to Bonneville. And then in what year was that? I think 2011, I was driving for Ford in this Mustang at Bonneville. And we had driven the year before for Ford and went 258 miles an hour up at the Salt. And then, so my dad in 1968, when the Challenger 2 was running, and my dad had 3 Mustangs for Ford. And so he had a red one, a blue one, and the yellow one. And what we were trying to do in 2011 was emulate what my dad did for Ford for the launch of the Mach 1 Mustang. So we ran the blue one the year before, then we built this one. And we took it to the wind tunnel. We thought we got everything right, and we didn't. We had the center of pressure in front of the center of gravity, and the thing lost complete control at 264 miles an hour, and that's how it ended up. So the thing took off. It went 25 feet straight in the air. It flew 1,100 feet through the air. It rolled 7 times. On the 6th of 7th rolls, it saw 64 Gs. Now, this is when the Hans device first started happening, and I had the Hans device on during this wreck. And we had an in-car camera. I don't have that footage with us, but on the 6th to 7th rolls, now this is with all the seat belts, everything, 6-point, everything was, I mean, it was bolted tight. I couldn't hardly breathe when I left the start line. And my head went underneath the steering wheel. It moved 18 inches. Nothing broke as far as like seat belts or seats or any of that kind of stuff. But that's how far the body moved inside the seat belts. So, I mean, it just tells you how important. You can't be in there tight enough and you can't be in there secure enough and have enough safety equipment. So fortunately, I wasn't hurt. I towed the thing home the next day. So now, this is my love right here. Now, this is a car this was the car when we were running the Mustangs up there in 68, and that's when it was built, in 1968. Ford Motor Company and my dad put it together, and a bunch of really, really talented Southern California drag racers and fabricators. So in 68, they did all the Mustang stuff. My dad and Danny Thompson driving set over 330 national and international records up there on endurance tests. They ran that yellow car, or the original yellow car ran 24 hours, 256 mile an hour average. I mean, 156 mile an hour average. So, I mean, for 24 hours. So it's, that was with pit stops and everything. Now it was a 10-mile circle and on flat, dead flat. So no bank to hold you in or anything like that. And running at night with smudge pots for lights. That's how you found your way around. So pretty amazing. So anyway, it was 42 years later when, well, let me regress a little bit here. So with my dad not letting me drive and anything and all that stuff and telling me I had to do it on my own, which is fine. Well, he came to me in 1988 and he said, I want to run this car again after sitting all that time. And he said, I would like to have you drive it. And I mean, it was like, oh my God, really? Sorry, I get emotional. So anyway, we started working on this thing and got it out and got everything looking. You know, this is what we got to do. This is a motor package we got to run. This is how it'll happen. I'll handle the sponsorship. You do all the mechanical work and put that team together and we'll run it together. Well, 3 months later, my dad got murdered. So there the car's set for another, 18 years. And I walk around and I'd look at it and I'm going, God, I'd sure like to run that car, but I didn't want to run it without my dad. So anyway, but finally we did. I mean, I'm sitting there talking to my wife, Valerie, and I'm saying, I wonder if that car can go 400 mile an hour. Can it go 400 mile an hour? I mean, now it's 42 years old or something. It's like, you know what? I don't want to be sitting here later in life wondering, could I do that? So one of the initial problems on that car, being it was so old, the roll cage was real small, 1.5 inches. Helmets were a lot smaller in those days and all that stuff. And I had to be Houdini to get in this thing. It took me literally months of practice in trying to get in and out of this car. I'd get stuck and I'd call my wife and I'd say, hey, help me out, you know. So it was like, the uniforms at the time were so stiff you could not bend over. I mean, you couldn't tie your shoes. You know, you had to have them up or, Valerie, can you come help me put my shoes on? You know, one of those deals. And so somebody told me, well, there's this crazy Frenchman that makes a uniform that flexes. You know, and I met Eves, and I didn't have enough money for a uniform at the time, and Eves loaned me this. And that's part of this foundation. And that was how I first got together with Eves. So the crazy Frenchman set me out. Now this is a camera. Now the one thing that's really important about Bonneville, I've driven a lot of different kind of cars, formula cars, off-road cars, a lot of different things. So when I got to Bonneville, I thought, this isn't going to be too hard. You point the thing straight, you gas it on down there, and I got a lot of experience. It shouldn't be a problem. Wrong. Everything you know about racing, might as well throw it out the window when you get to Bonneville. It's a completely different animal. And that was part of how I crashed that yellow car. I mean, the thing got sideways at 242 miles an hour. I said, I've been driving sideways my entire life. You know, that's all I've done is sideways. So this isn't any problem. Well, when you get sideways at Bonneville, you pull the parachute. And the parachute comes out. It separates the center of pressure from the center of gravity, and it gives the car stability when it's in yaw, and it'll bring it back straight. So anyway, this is so you don't want to steer very much. You want to keep everything soft hands and everything, and don't fight the car. But this particular run right here, we ran 450 miles an hour. We ran 459 out the back door, and this is in-car camera, but the steering wheel, or the camera is on the steering wheel. So it's a little bit different kind of motion here. So leaving the starting line here, and off with a push truck. And the truck pushes me about 10 to 12 miles an hour before I, I need glasses. Anyway, so this is the thing going down there, and as you can see, it's not really turning very much. It looks like much, but when I got to about the 4 and the 3, so Bonneville, you run from 0 mile to the 5 mile, and then they time you between the 2 and the 3, 3 and the 4, and the 4 and the 5. So coming up here is between the 4 and the 5. The thing's going about 430 miles an hour. And right there, I hit a little bit of a crosswind, and that's how much steering's going in that thing. I mean, and my eyes are open too. That's pretty amazing. So, but though that's just kind of what we see from inside at those kind of speeds. And at Bonneville, it's harder than heck to get to whatever that speed is, 450. But the equal problem is trying to stop. And Bonneville, it's getting stopped is got 2 parachutes, and that's mainly because you're not going to put the brakes on at that speed without smoking them off right away. But so that's just kind of what the thing looks like from in car. And what do you get at Bonneville? So if you go over 400 miles an hour, and there's only I think Lee could correct me on this. I think 12 people that have ever gone over 400, and a bunch of those are jets. So I think it's either 5 or 7, Lee, is that right? 5 or 7 people? Yeah, 5 people that have been over 400 miles an hour and set a record. So, and what do you get for a prize? You get a hat, a black hat. So anyway, that was, getting that hat, whoa. But now the car's going sideways like this. Dry sheds hits the salt, comes back in, tears a whole bunch more stuff up, and got flipped back out, came back in again. And it tore the car up from the rear engine to the tail section. It just destroyed everything. And that's kind of what was left of that. So, escaped, dodged another bullet there. And but that's, you don't want to see that kind of stuff. That's what you get at Bonneville, and Lee will look at that and say, that's right there, that's the gospel. You can do all the bullshit, all the BS that you want, and all that different things saying, oh yeah, I was going 450, I was going 515 miles an hour here. But when you get that timing tag, and you can see mile 3, mile 4, exit speed in mile 5, that's the real deal. That's where all the BS stops, and that's your tag. So that's what we go through. So at Bonneville also, to get a record, you don't get to do it once. So you go down, and if you exceed the existing record in your class by, I think, 1% or something like that, then you go back to impound, and you got 4 hours to work on your car until you run it the next morning. So that's an example of that's all the body work. There's 86 pieces of body work on that car to get all that stuff off. And we have 2 engines, 3,000 horsepower each engine, 87% nitromethane. And I don't know if you know much about nitromethane, but that stuff is badass. I mean, it makes power. We on our down run, we went 446, and on our return run, they gave me 3% more nitro, 3%. And for the next day, that was 600 more horsepower. 600 more horsepower. Now, it shortens the fuse, but it'll make it. So in between our runs, we take the motor apart, do the bottom end, go through all the bearings, front and back motor, and you got 4 hours to do that. And the SCTA officials, they're right there. So they make sure, that after 4 hours, all that stuff's got to be bolted back on. You got to be on the trailer. And then the next morning, you get to make your return run. And so that's what we do in between runs. So now this picture, Lee Kennedy can attest to this. So that is return run morning. You get to come in at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you get the car ready. So we got to warm it up. So all these people are, they're getting their cars ready, and that we got to warm 2 engines up. You got to preheat the oil, warm it up, and it is so intense, because now you're going to go out. There's another thing about Bonneville now. So we run basically once a year, twice a year maybe. In August is our big event. Now, in this car, it runs 400 miles an hour. You haven't driven for a year. You don't get to go out and make 3 laps like out here, maybe change a spring, change an anti-roll bar, something like that. You haven't run for 1 year. You bolt yourself in that car, and you go 400 miles an hour. Hopefully go 400 miles an hour. So anyway, so you go 400 miles an hour, or in our case, 446. So now you've qualified for the next run. But it's way harder. It's way harder to do it twice within that deal. So that's the intensity you get in the morning. Now, we're just about ready, and we get that thing all ready, and Valerie, my wife, she comes over and she says, look, there's a guy with a Carmen Ghia, right? Now, Bonneville, you can run anything as long as you pass safety for that particular class. And this guy was maybe trying to go 100 miles an hour. So the car is sitting there all by itself. We got 18 people, and we're thrashing. Everybody's just da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And this car's sitting over there by itself. And Valerie taps me on the shoulder, and here comes this guy in a station wagon with his wife. They pull up to their car. He gets his helmet out, and he gets in his car, and he drives it up to the start line. And we're going, what are we doing wrong here with this picture? But that's what's so cool about Bonneville. You go up there, it doesn't matter who you are. You can go in anybody's pit, and they're not going to throw you out like they might do here, or taking pictures or anything like that. You hang out for very long. Pretty soon they're making you a sandwich. You know, they say, well, give me that wrench over there. And pretty soon you're helping them. And that's the best way to start at Bonneville. If you want to go up there, you go up there and you volunteer. And everybody is cool. I mean, there's no real egos or prima donna crap up there. It's like, and you hang out with a team and work with them and kind of get a feeling for how that all goes. And pretty soon the next year you're there with your own car. Okay, that's my mom. And my mom was with my dad when he went 400 miles an hour in 1960. Here she is the morning we went 450, and a friend of mine caught her. That's a candid shot. She was over there kissing the wing before we went. I got to turn it quickly. That's my view right there. That's called Floating Mountain on the other end. And that's where we point the thing. Those blue lines are what you got to stay in between. And I think, is that course 100 or 125 feet wide, Lee?
400 miles an hour, about 60 foot.
Yeah, 60. There you go. You're threading a needle down there. But that's what you see from inside the cockpit right there. And in 2018, when we went real fast, those were one of the years where all those fires and everything were there. And usually what I do when I sit on the start line, I take a point down there in Floating Mountain, and in case I get sideways or a little bit disorientated, I can see I have something to come back to. But in 2018, with all the fires, you could not see Floating Mountain when you left the start line. I mean, you couldn't see it, and you're laying way low. So anyway, the other element that you have to deal with at Bonneville, which is you don't have any control. Mother Nature has way more horsepower than any of us, and it's water. So that was 2015, and so it's a lake, right? It's a dry lake. So if you take a bottle of water and pour it on one of these tables right here, it doesn't take very much water to cover that entire surface. And Bonneville is actually so flat, you can see the curvature of the earth up there. So when it rains, I mean, it can flood like that. That's what we call into the road, lands in, and that was that year. So we didn't run Bonneville for, I think, 582 days because of the rain. So you go to a sponsor and you do your big pitch and you tell them, I'm going to go up there, I'm going to set this record, I'm going to make you famous and all that kind of stuff. And you get up there and it rains and you got to wait a year. And so it's another element that's you can't deal with. That's our crew right after we ran a two-way average of 448.756 mile an hour in 2018. And that's me. And so now I sold that car. I had to pay for it. And I'd borrowed money to run, which everybody knows you don't borrow money to go to Bonneville or go anywhere racing. But anyway, we sold it and paid off all the bills and still hold the record. Don't have the car, but we still hold the record. So now I'm driving this year here. Next month we'll be at El Mirage, and we're going to drive on the dirt. And the record in that car on the dirt, I think, is 280, maybe 284, 287, something like that. So this is Don Ferguson's car. His shop's about a mile down the road here. And so that's what I'll be driving at El Mirage in May, and then at Bonneville in August. And hopefully that'll have an A motor in it, which is up to 500 cubic inches, injected nitromethane. And hopefully the goal is to see if we can push it over 400 miles an hour. So that's what's coming up, and that's my story, racing at any age. That's true. El Mirage has a purple hat or maroon hat. Oh, Merlot, sorry, a Merlot hat. I thought that was wine. But anyway, and I don't have a... I think so, yeah. Yeah, I've only driven there. I only have 4 laps there. So I'd like to get in what they call the dirty 200-mile-an-hour club at El Mirage. So, but it's different. It's only a mile and a third, and you got to shut off really early and make sure your parachutes are out so Mr. Kennedy doesn't come and chew your butt from going out that back door. So anyway, any questions, anybody? Cool.
Here, I'll start with a question. Okay. The Stadium Truck Series, we talked a little bit about that, and they ran at the Coliseum here, and one of the things they did was to get up up in the stands, the peristyle, and come down through there. I thought NASCAR was going to do that when they were coming, but no. What was that like? What was it like?
So the peristyle, my dad came up with that when he went to the president of the Coliseum or whatever, and he said, I want to take your beautiful field down there, and he says I want to cover it in dirt, and then I want to put dirt up through your bleachers, and then I want to run these trucks and buggies around the field that they have the Olympics in, go up through the peristyle, and then I'm going to turn around, I'm going to jump those things down to the bottom. It'll be a really good show. And this guy's looking at me going, yeah, right, we play football here. And anyway, that was such a thrill, because when you came off the top of the Coliseum, we put a little lip on there, you jumped 70 feet. So you jumped from the top of the peristyle, not the top of the peristyle, but the bottom of the arches, and you jumped 70 feet through the air. So when you went off the top of the peristyle, all you could see was the lights on the other end until the car started to drop that way. You didn't know if anybody was below you or anything, but I mean, you had to leap. You couldn't back up. Somebody's going to do it and pass you. So, yeah, peristyle was awesome.
Right. And a great series, I thought. Yeah. Questions here? I see in the back, Steve.
Danny, when you boosted the nitromethane, did you have problems with it blacking or beating the bearings out of the bottom of the motor?
Yeah, the more nitro you put on it, the harder the hit is internally. And but I tell you, when that thing started on the start line with 3% more nitro, and I'm sitting there, I'm going, something's different. Now, you're sitting in between 2 engines making 3,000 horsepower apiece, and you got earplugs in, and you're talking to your crew chief and all that stuff. And I'm going, something's different. Something's different with the sound. And they pushed me off on the truck, and I gassed it up, and it was like, oh my God, it was, yeah, unbelievable. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thanks again, Danny. That's just exactly.
Thank you, Eve.
Terrific. Thank you. Okay, thank you. And as we mentioned, Brian. Okay, here. Yeah, well. Did you want to come up, Brian? There. So.
I don't want to shake your hand before you talk.
Thank you. Can you take a picture? Take a picture with
Take a picture. Yeah.
maybe Mike.
Okay. Right here. Hey, gentlemen.
Merci beaucoup. Imagine, American, oui, typically American. And the French, unlike you.
So Brian Redman, veteran, sports car racer, endurance racer, Formula One. In recent years, a lot with the vintage car racing, and you got the classic at Elkhart Lake, correct? And here you are, coming out this weekend. Appreciate seeing you. And you go back to the days when drivers would be without seat belts, leap out of the cars, the tremendous fires and everything. Did you want to tell us a little bit about those days and how you see today's safety equipment in the cars and on the drivers?
Thank you. Well, I started racing in 1959, but by 68, I'd pretty well got, pretty high up in road racing in Europe, and I was driving for the best long-distance team in the world, the John Wyer Gulf GT40 Ford, and because we'd won the race at Kyalami 9 Hours in November 1967, I'd signed a contract with 68. And at the same time, the Cooper Car Company, who did Formula One, they were actually going downhill pretty quickly, but anyway, they asked if I'd do Formula One. So by, January of 1968, we're having a really, really got pretty well up. I was being paid, $1,000 a race. Hey, big money. And it was dangerous. And in 68, half the Formula One Grand Prix drivers didn't wear seatbelts. It was because of the danger of fire. And they'd rather be thrown out or to be able to jump out. And I was actually in about 6 fires, and it was not much fun, really. But one year, my Formula 2 car, whistling along, the engine goes pop, 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 like this, and it's on fire. So, I'd heard about these guys jumping out, so I had belts on, and I started to stand up. Then I looked at how fast I was going, and I thought, I think I'd rather stay in the car. So I stayed in. So in my second Grand Prix Formula One race, I finished third in the Spanish Grand Prix. And it was only really because everybody broke down, because the reliability in those days of all the racing cars was pretty bad, really. So anyway, the third race, well, first of all, finishing third, I'd started last in the race. And I'd not passed my teammate, Ludovico Scarfiotti, the Italian nobleman. And so on the little Fiat convertible going round after the race, there's Graham Hill, the 3-time world champion, and Denny Hume, another world Formula One champion, me. And I'd been waving to the crowd, like this, and I turned to my right. As I turned to my right, Graham Hill turned to his left, and he saw me, really, for the first time. His jaw dropped, and his arm dropped, and he said, "Christ almighty, don't tell me you were bloody third." So the next race, the Belgian Grand Prix, at Spa-Francorchamps, the fastest, most dangerous track in the world at that time. The suspension broke on the 7th lap, and I had an enormous accident. I actually went off in one of the few places there was a barrier. Most of the track, it wasn't a racetrack, it was public roads, 8 miles, of public roads, very, very fast. But this particular corner, Les Kuhns, at the top of the hill, it actually had a barrier. But as I rolled over the barrier, my arm got stuck between the car and the barrier. And so 3 wheels came off the car, and I'd landed right in the corner worker's post, So a corner worker was badly injured by one of the wheels. And he had a heart attack and a ruptured spleen, and I'm lying there in the car. It caught fire as well. And this arm that was injured, I was trying to drag it out of the flames, and there was total chaos. However, 4 hours later, I'm in the University of Liège teaching hospital, and they've been attending to the corner worker that was injured first. So this is about 4 hours later, and they get me on the table. And the surgeon, in those days there were no special surgeons. They were general surgeons. And the head of surgery at the University of Liège Hospital was Professor Ferdinand Orban, who'd been a Winston Churchill aide in World War II. So I knew what he was doing. So he looked down and he said, Monsieur Redman, it may not be possible to save the arm. I smiled. I said, thank you, Professor. He says, why are you smiling? I said, because I'm here. So that was like 6 months off, but at the end of the year, I got an invitation to drive for Porsche, so I joined the big Porsche team, and they had 5 cars at Daytona for the 24-hour race. And I'd still got, my arm had to be redone 6 weeks before because it hadn't healed. And the surgeon who did it, he opened it up from my wrist to my elbow, he took bone out of my hip and glued it on the broken bits that were cleaned up. And he said, don't use it till you have to. So I threw the sling off at Daytona and I drove really with one hand, resting this hand, the injured one, on the wheel in case. And I thought, boy, 24 hours of this with a co-driver, Vic Elford. It didn't look too good. Anyway, in the evening, the first of the long-tail 908s came in the pits with the engine misfiring. The engineers examined it. He said, we are finished. They will all break. Ha, ha, ha. When we were out by midnight. So they then sent my co-driver, Joe Siffert, the great Swiss driver, to Sebring to do a 24-hour test for the 12-hour race. At 20 hours, the chassis broke. The engineers examined it. They said, this is good. The race is only 12 hours. Yeah, well, guess what happened in the race? They all broke the chassis. So I'd won the Targa Florio. Is this working okay? Can you hear it okay? Okay. The Targa Florio in Sicily was a road race. It was 44 miles to one lap. There's 700 corners per lap. And my great co-driver, Joe Siffert, and I had won it in 1970. And I'd made a stupid retirement to South Africa in the end of 70, so I'd come back out. I didn't have a drive. But in April, John Wyer, the head of the Gulf team and Porsche, he said, would you like to do the Targa Florio? Because Derek Bell, who took my place in the team, he'd never done it. And I'd won it the year before with Joe Siffert. Anyway, Joe crashed the car the day before the race. They repaired it overnight. And unusually, John Wyer said to me, Redman, we'd like you to start. I said, what for? He said, I don't want Siffert and Rodriguez knocking each other off. The other driver in the team was Pedro Rodriguez. And so right from the start of the race, the handling wasn't normal. Oh, and just before the start, a German engineer said to me, Herr Redman, if you must have the accident, do not crash on the right side. So 22 miles into this 44-mile circuit, the steering broke. And I hit a stone kilometre post right in the fuel tank. And it exploded. And how I got out, I don't know. I was soaked in fuel and on fire from head to foot. And spectators they took 45 minutes before any help came. But in that time, the spectators were fanning me with magazines. Nobody knew where I was, nobody in the team at all. Anyway, Richard Atwood, a team driver, and Pedro Rodriguez came and found me at about 10 o'clock that night and took me back to the hotel. There was a German doctor with the Porsche team. He gave me pain-killing injections. The next day, they flew me to England, but I was bandaged from head to foot. I was like the Invisible Man. So they'd rented this jet out of Geneva. When it got to Manchester, not too far from where I lived, I knew that my wife had come to meet the plane. So as I appeared at the door, but I couldn't see, I was blind, I heard a crash as somebody fell on the ground, and I thought, it's my wife's fainted, Anyway, it was a friend of mine who'd brought her who'd fainted. So anyway, that was several weeks of recovery from that. And then I started coming to America and racing Formula 5000. And I was lucky to race for the greatest American engineer, really, Jim Hall of Chaparral Cars. And we won the championship for 3 years, with Mario finishing second for 2 years and Alan Cecchini second the third year. The first year, I should have won the championship. Jody Scheckter, who went on to become world champion for Ferrari, he won the championship, but I won 5 races and he won 4, but he did 2 more races because I was racing for Ferrari in Europe. So he won the championships. Anyway, these were my greatest years in racing. Although I'd driven, for Porsche and Ferrari, BMW, Jaguar, Aston Martin in the long-distance races. But still, those 4 years with Jim Hall and Chaparral were my best racing years. And anyway, at the end of '76, the NCCA, in its wisdom, decided to change the rules and change the cars. The name Can-Am, which many of you would know, Can-Am had finished in 1974. There was no more Can-Am. But the track promoters got better crowds for Can-Am than they did for Formula 5000. So they changed the name and made us put bodywork on these open-wheel single-seaters and call it Can-Am. It was a marketing exercise. So I arrived in Saint-Joseph, Canada, in early June of 1977. I'd never seen the car before, but I know, prepared by Chaparral and tested by the great chief mechanic, Franz Weiss, that it'll be good. So out I go, it's good. At this point, I'm 3 seconds faster than anybody. And Jim Hall says, how is it? I said, it's good. And he said, what do you want? To change the balance in the turns? And I said, drop the front wing 1/4 of an inch. On the next lap, at 170 miles an hour, it took off at the top of the hill, went straight up about 40 feet, came down upside down. That broke my neck, C1, smashed this shoulder, split my breastbone, broke my ribs. But anyway, as it rolled off the track, it landed on its wheels, and my heart had stopped. But the track doctor that weekend was a heart specialist, so he got my heart going. Then the ambulance were tire on the way to hospital. And when my wife arrived from England the next morning, there's a photograph on the front page of the paper with the doors of the ambulance open. The 2 guys are working on the wheel. I'm in the back, not looking too good. And it said, Redman anymore. Redman is dead. And so I then had spent several interesting weeks in the Montreal Neurological Institute. And I was the only one out of about 8 patients that actually was going to come out. They were in there with broken necks from everything you could think of. One guy had dived into an empty swimming pool. One guy, a motorcyclist, had hit a tree. A skier had hit a tree. Anyway, one of the badly injured but somewhat mobile, not really mobile, patients, they wheeled him to the end of my bed every day. And after about a week, they'd let me go. They'd drill holes in my head with weights down in the bed, and I was tied to the bed, my wrists, my ankles, and my waist. But after a week or so, they undid all this, and I've got this massive thing on my head and shoulders. And they anyway, I see every morning they push him up. Well, one day, he was completely incontinent, so he's got a bottle, for urine. And one minute he starts looking at me like this and smiling, so I smiled back at him. And then very, very slowly, he's leaning over like this, and he keeps grinning at me. I'm grinning back. And he gets the bottle, the urine bottle, and he very slowly, this takes about an hour, he lifts it like this. And then he got to here, and he goes to me, and I go, and he goes, and threw it. And about that time, I wasn't tied down, and about midnight, I saw the nurses, in their little office, and I pushed the cart away from the end of the bed, and somehow I lifted myself onto the bottom of the bed, dropped off, and walked into the nurses' station. So I was then tied again, hand and fist. Anyway, so it was that was a difficult time. But I came back after that. It took me a year to recover. And in November of that year, 1977, I rang Joe Hoppen, the head of Volkswagen, Porsche, and Audi competition. I said, Joe, can you find me a car for Sebring 12 hours in March? Not a winning car, but a decent, reliable car. Yeah. I said, can you pay me? He says, yeah, I pay you $5,000. So off I go, and it's the second Dick Barber car. Dick Barber was the top, he owned the car, he got the best drivers. And this second car was a rental car. There were 2 guys, who didn't do much racing. One was a local, and we won the race. It was unbelievable. And then in 1981, brought another new car to America, the Lola T600, and won the IMSA Camel GT Championship. So anyway, I think that's enough for the time being, and thank you very much.
You have really one of the hero on this time. He was racing with Jimmy Clark, with Jackie Stewart, with all the big name in Italy, American, etc. Yeah. You were very close also with Dan Gurney. Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Thank you to visit us.
Yes, indeed, a real hero. Such great experiences, such great stories, except for the injury part. But thanks for being with us. Thank you. Moving on, Dean Case, who is very active with Formula SAE in a lot of the schools and kind of has his hand on what students are looking at today, because they are the future of the auto industry and the racing industry. And you've got a couple of points you want to cover here.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Is there anyone in the room who does not know what Formula SAE is? Everyone knows? Perfect. We've got a display downstairs, and we've got some students from Cal Baptist here in the room. I would encourage you afterwards, go down and take a look at the cars. If you walk through the IndyCar paddock or IMSA paddock, I don't think you'll find any race engineer under the age of 40 who does not have Formula SAE or Baja SAE on their resume. This is really the training ground for not just the sport, but the industry as a whole. We did an event, we collaborated with SEMA last month. We had 425 students from over 30 universities there, and 13 companies are actively hiring. So if you're looking to hire engineers, we have this amazing talent pool. And we got Ben Heifel and Luis from Haas. They are kind of leaders on our SA section board. They'll take you down there and introduce you to the students and, give them some feedback on their cars. But a lot of this is helping develop the future of the sport. And SAE SoCal, we're the second largest collection of engineers in the country, second only to Detroit. But we have a more diverse industry base here because it's not just ground transportation, but it's also aerospace. And we've really established ourselves with doing a lot of collaboration, like with SEMA. I've known Don Taylor for 30 plus years, so we're happy to collaborate on this event. I've got Lana Chrisman in the back from Lions Museum. That's where it's kind of our home for our regular meetings. So if you have great content to share, we've got great audiences who want to hear the stories. And we've partnered here with the Long Beach Grand Prix Association for the last 12 years. One of the students asked me originally, could we do a parade lap with our Formula car at the race? And I said, let's see, experimental vehicles, student drivers, concrete walls. I don't think so. But I think we can give you display space that you can become active business partners because, let's face it, you go to some races, it looks like an AARP meeting, and we'd like to make sure we have younger audiences, and that's what our SAE students represent. So we're just happy to be here. I love the connection. I was here in 1975 as a kid. I saw Brian Redman win the race here. In 1982, I was on part of a team that raced at Pomona, one of the first ever Mickey Thompson off-road races. So it's great to be connected with wonderful people here. So Don, I'll let you turn it over to our feature. We have a film presentation here, which will be very cool. But I would just encourage you sometime today or tomorrow, please visit the expo area and visit the students. If you're hiring engineers, I'm sure the Cal Baptist students brought resumes because they're very prepared. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean. And yes, we're very happy to have SAE is one of our partners here in helping us do this and helping with getting a video of this seminar, which will be posted. At this point, we're going to turn things over to Taylor Hawkins, filmmaker, and he got involved with Eve and created a special project. We want to hear something about the background of that, and then we will actually look at it.
Hi everyone, a patient crowd here. This is our final presentation, playing for the very first time a short documentary about Stand 21 and the legacy of Yves Morzeau. I came upon this project with Yves. I had made a film about a gentleman racer who was actually wearing a Stand 21 suit and one of Eve's employees saw the film, reached out asking to use it. And I had never heard about Stand 21's story. I thought to myself, this is an incredible story. How's this not been told? And he said you can just ask Eve. And when I met Eve and asked him about it, you want the mic here? Oh, okay. He said, I don't want a marketing commercial, but if you want the true story, I'm open to sharing my heart and my life. And he really did invite me into his home and into his world. And it's been a dream project for me, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you.
Exactly. A lot of people interview me and make movie and discuss with me and explain every time the same thing. And I said to Taylor, please, Taylor, it's a legacy. If I'm and me, I wrote my story, but I never get any picture, any movie because I was in the show. And then when you start with no money and you want to run a company, come from zero to now we have 120 around the world. We are making thousand of overalls, helmets, all that, and everything is produced inside, and everything is produced by Stand 21. And I'm very proud today, like you have seen before, to transmit to my kids. But I'm 78. God is waiting for me. Maybe in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I don't know. But sure, everybody live, okay? But I am very happy. You make a very good job. We have to make some small because one part of my life, it was in 82 when Gilles Villeneuve died. And I was with Jacques Lafitte after he came out of the car. He was on a race track, and he came out of the track. He jumped out of the car and come to me and say, Yves, we leave. Gilles is dead. Because the evening before, we had a beer with him at his truck. And that's how we decided to have a golf course together with Alain Prost. We will add that. But now, let's go to the movie.
Okay. I have to stop my tears, too. Yves, you're the man. That's... So when you hear dedicated to safety, it's not just a slogan, it's the man's life. And we're proud to be part of it. And I think you'll remember today for this and some other things you've seen and heard today. So, Yves, you want to tell us?
I'm very touched. Very touched. You did a great job. You did the job. I was there. I did a lot more. We forgot the helmet story. We forgot so many stories. But, but it's 56 years of life. I'm old, but I'm happy because I did a lot of things. I was a dreamer. I was thinking, and I was completely a dreamer, but sometimes dream arrive. Thank you to all of you.
Thanks for watching. I'm going to follow up with that, John. We'll be looking to release this film. It's kind of this first time anyone's seen it. Just wanted to get a little test audience, some feedback. We'll make a couple touches and be looking forward to sharing it with more people. So, thank you.
Stay here. So exactly where it'll go, where it will be seen, you do not know at this point, correct?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, most likely a YouTube near you. I mean, I think, there's a lot of Formula One footage in this, and could be something that maybe you try to partner with them in, but I think Eve's story is definitely expanded beyond that as well, and so I think it would be appropriate just to be out there as a documentary film for people to see the story. So we'll see.
Well, with this one complete, and I know you've done work with SRO and capturing racing action and what's behind it. What do you see on the horizon? What kind of subjects, things are you looking to get into that fascinate you, that you want to do next with your projects?
This, you know, I love making documentary films. I love telling stories, and I think, I don't know, it's such an honor for me to meet Yves and get to share his story. I don't know, it's been such a special experience. I think I'm always looking for other stories with depth and heart, and I have a personal passion and interest in motorsports, so that's definitely a world I've been looking to explore and tell more stories in. But it's yeah, it'll be hard to top this one in many ways, I think. But yeah, so.
Any questions here? Well, thank you. I think you'll look back at this day and have many memories, many happy memories. Brian Redman with us, Danny Thompson, and Mike and Chris from SFI, and Taylor with the premiere of his film. And thanks to Dean and SAE's help putting this on. And it will be captured, has been captured by TJ Kuhns, so we will look forward to seeing that posted, I believe, on the SAE SoCal website. YouTube page, and it will go to our Racing Go Safer YouTube channel as well. So look for that. And thank you all for attending today. And I think this is a very special meeting we had. Yes, downstairs, as always, at Long Beach. Some of the Formula SAE cars are there with the students. And like we said, they're the future, too. And so look forward to a bright future for racing safety, and the good times ahead. So thank you for attending. Lee Kennedy, yes?
I've got a few SCTA rule books for people that want to be interested in racing land speed.
Yes, and you know, we encourage you, El Mirage, look at your calendar. Danny's going to be there next time, 17th, 18th, 19th of May, and it's so close from here. In Bonneville, just a few hours longer. Yeah.
Wasn't here 12 hours. It's a once in a lifetime. Once you go, you'll never come back. I mean, you'll never stop coming back.
You'll never come back. Life-changing event. And Eve loves it. Eve will go to Sebring, Daytona, Bonneville, Pomona, you name it. Laguna Seca, Eve will be there. So with that, we're going to say thank you again, and we'll see you next year. And Lee, you have another announcement? You got them with you there. Okay. Okay, well, thanks again. Thanks to all our guests. And our speakers will stick around and take a picture.